Welcome to We the People, a new birth of freedom. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I trust that you will subscribe, tell your friends, your family, anyone you know, your neighbors, to tune in, listen, ask questions, negotiate, debate, whatever the case may be. Thank you so much. I want to discuss something just for a moment. I want to present a scenario to you, a true scenario. In 1963, in the month of January, a governor of a southern state was elected as the governor of that specific state. You can read history. All the facts are there. He stared right at the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. In fact, he swore as the newly elected governor to what? Support and defend the Constitution of the United States. He took an oath. And yet, in his inaugural speech, he looked the 13th Amendment in the eye, which, as I said, abolished slavery, spit on it, trampled it, blasphemed it, and he uttered these notable words that forever have found their way in the history, the tainted, stained history of the United States. He said, "I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever." And previously to that notable statement, he said, "I throw the gauntlet in the face of tyranny," because he felt, regardless of what the supreme law of the land stated under the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, he felt that it was an infringement, it was tyranny upon his freedom to still be prejudiced, enact involuntary servitude, and move on with his destructive and hateful agenda. So he spit right in the face of it. "I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever." This was a Democrat. It could just as well have been a Republican, but it wasn't, because it was mostly the Republican Party that fought for slavery to be abolished. Read history. But here was a man, an elected government official of that southern state, spitting in the face of the 13th Amendment, the supreme law of the land, blaspheming it, trampling it underfoot, and declaring his doctrine of segregation. That's why the 13th Amendment not only abolishes slavery, but also involuntary servitude. And those southern states were saturated, infected with involuntary servitude. The black people could only ride in certain places on the bus. They could only use certain restrooms and restaurants and drinking fountains and schools. Involuntary servitude. I don't want to pass too much judgment on the President of the United States at that time, because he was never permitted to stay in office long enough till we could really witness the good, the bad, the ugly, and indifferent of his presidential run. But nevertheless, he stayed in Washington, tried to negotiate, while riots were taking place, not at the hands of Dr. Martin Luther King and those that followed him, but the provocation of those that supported Wallace's agenda, his hateful, prejudicial, unlawful, illegal agenda. He didn't believe in the 13th Amendment, apparently. He felt that His agenda was above the law. So what happened? Hoses were turned on the black people. They were beaten. Dogs unleashed upon them because he wanted segregation. In previous videos, I've made this statement before, and I mean it. Had I been president of the United States at that time, I would have strapped a gun on my hip. I would have grabbed some National Guard and We the People militia. Secret Service. I would have went down there, stood in front of him, and challenged him to continue his terrorism on citizens of the United States of America. And before the day had ended, he would be tried for treason. That's treason. That's totally against what the United States of America was built upon. Totally against the supreme law of the land. He was no more than a Hitler. He talked about tyranny. He was the tyrant. He was no more than a Stalin, a Marxist, an Egyptian pharaoh. He was evil. He was corrupt. He was anti-American. And yet, he was permitted to be governor. I guarantee our founding fathers would have tried him for treason and punished him accordingly. They didn't fight for such freedom and liberty and life for that to go on. Especially in 1963, many, many decades after the 13th Amendment had been ratified. Let me read it to you again. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, we're talking about due process here, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Period. The supreme law of the land. For Wallace, wasn't good enough. For his cohorts, his partners in crime, not good enough. For the police, for those that supported his anti-American agenda, he was a gangster. He was a terrorist, a domestic terrorist. He should have been tried, prosecuted, and punished accordingly. My point in saying all this is to direct you to focus on this. Politicians, and they do it all the time, they can look right in the face of the supreme law of the land, read its words, the simplicity yet genius of those words, spit on it, trample it, try to circumvent it, subvert it, destroy it. You want to know who the most dangerous people on the planet are? Well, this has been my experience. I'll share it with you. Religious and political leaders. Read history, people. Look down through the corridors of history. You'll find the most corrupt, the most tyrannical, the most evil, the most perverse leaders that have ever walked this planet are religious leaders and politicians, governmental politicians. I hate to see people have such hatred in their heart that they go into a store, a restaurant, a school, and shoot innocent people. It's horrific. Those that commit those crimes should be punished to the highest extent of the law. But they're not the most dangerous people. Read history. I encourage you, look down through the annals of history. Open its pages. Read its words. Read its documentation. The most dangerous people in the world are those that are greedy for power, insatiable appetites for power, money, popularity. Religious leaders and politicians alike. Really, there's no difference between the two. The blood runs the same, the evil runs the same, the corruption runs the same. So when these politicians stand up and give you a sweet smile, a flowery speech, be very careful, because they will look right at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and if they want to push their agenda, they will deceive you with their flowery speeches, and they will spit on the very documents that has made this nation as free as it is, unlike any other nation in the world. There are many Wallaces in the world today. There are many Wallaces in our nation today. There are many Wallaces that want to push their agenda. They hate the Declaration of Independence. They despise the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They are tyrants. They are corrupt. They are evil. They are liars. They are perverse. They are blasphemers of your life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. Until next time, be a true American, and God bless.